Hi everybody, we're going to talk today about creating a digital collage. If you've ever made a collage in school before, you know that it involves taking different images, cutting and pasting them into a background, and essentially we're going to be doing the same thing, except we're going to be using digital tools, specifically Photoshop instead, but it still involves cutting, pasting, and creating a hopefully a uniformed composition. So I really like Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter, so I decided to use her as my subject today. And I have 4 different images that I've brought into Photoshop. You can see them along the top tab here. And I chose a portrait of her when she's older, and also a portrait of her by Alfred Stieglitz when she's younger. And then I have one of her famous flower paintings. These are red poppies. And one of her southwestern United States skulls that we've got here. She did a lot of animal skulls. And I'm going to try to bring all these things together into a coherent composition. Okay? So the first thing that I want to do, or you want to do, is decide which image is going to be your background. This is going to be mine. And I'm going to start with this image of her. And I need to select the figure of Georgia and cut her out. The best tool to do that is going to be the magic wand tool. So I'm going to select that. That's the 4th tool down there on your toolbox bar there. Going to bring that into my screen. And because I have a mostly solid background, it's going to select really, really well. Okay, and I have my tolerance set to 50. Misses a few pixels here and there, but for the most part, it selected it really, really well. Okay, I see a couple of small things I can fix. For one, I need to add to my selection. If you hold Shift down, you can see that, see if you can see my cursor here, it adds the plus sign and allows me to add to that selection, or you can select it up here at the top. I'm also cutting her neck a little bit. So I want to go into the selection, subtract from selection, which is, if you can see my cursor hovering around up here, select that little button, go in, and actually I should be on my lasso tool, excuse me. So you can combine these selection tools, by the way. So I just used the magic wand tool. Now I'm flipping over to the lasso tool. So you can use them in conjunction. So now I'm going to select the subtract from selection tool, or a button. Now I'm going to just lasso out that little part that we selected but didn't need to, and now she has that little section of her neck, which would look odd. The reason it cut it out in the first place is because the highlight on her skin is very similar to the background highlight. So it's the magic wand tool just selects similar pixels. It's not smart about what it does. Okay, so now I'm going to add to my selection just to grab these little extra pixel bits. I'm not going to worry too much about it because I can always go in with an eraser. The most important thing is just to get the main subject or element of your composition cut out. And I do see one more thing down there that we'll take care of. Need my add to selection tool, don't I? Sometimes it gets confusing about what part is actually selected. The last thing I need to do before I cut her out is simply go up to select at the top, scroll down to inverse. Now her figure is cut out and the background is unselected. Okay, we're going to go to edit, cut. Looks like it cut really cleanly and nicely. We're going to go to flip over to our poppy, edit, paste. And I really like the way this is looking. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Take your move tool, the all-purpose tool there. Grab the edge of your image. Slide it down to resize it. And you're definitely going to need to resize your elements as you're working within the composition, because things are not going to cut and paste cleanly and exactly the way you want them. Okay, so I'm liking the way this looks so far. We're going to now just get rid of that. Organizationally, it makes it easier. I'm going to flip over to, let's actually go over to our skull here. To save time, I've pre-selected the background, so I don't have to go over selection again. But you guys will understand you need to now go in and select the parts that you need to cut out. Okay, so we're going to take the skull, we're going to go to Edit and Cut. Nope, we did the background, didn't we? Okay, I forgot that important step of select and select inverse. Again, sometimes it's hard to tell what part is actually selected. So you're going to go to Edit, Cut. Now we've cut this out. We're going to go back to our main compositional part, Edit, Paste. And now we need to go the opposite direction. So we sized up the Georgia O'Keeffe portrait. Now we're going to get this to fit. All right. And I'm liking the way this skull overlays the flower really well. All right. The blue and the red are going together really well. I am seeing a little bit, let's zoom in here. I'm seeing a little bit of a residue. See that little bit right there? Okay, that may happen to you. It's not the end of the world. If you've got a little element that you missed during selection, you just then want to go into your eraser tool. Go up to your menu bar, get the eraser size correct, and then you can just go in and slice that part off real easily. It's better to be able to erase than add back in, which is a much more difficult thing to do. Okay? So we've got that element that we can then X out of, don't need to save it. And we're going to add, for the final element, the portrait of Georgia O'Keeffe when she's older. I have pre-selected the background. We're going to go to Edit, Cut. We're going to select our red poppy image, Edit, Paste, and now comes the challenging part. We've got a lot of elements in here. We're going to have to kind of, just like you were doing a real collage in real life, not in Photoshop, going to have to do some rearranging. Over here on my layer tab, you can see that we pop that out. Now everything is on a distinct layer. Once you cut and paste, it automatically makes a new layer, which is helpful. And you can take those layers and actually slide them around, and it's like stacking cards. The top layer is going to be in the most prominent position. And then you just decide what works best for you. And I actually think it worked pretty well the way that it was, but I do need to do a little rearranging with the spatial part of it. So I'm going to move my skull to the center. I'm going to slightly enlarge this portrait here. Maybe move her over a little bit to the left. And it's coming together, really nice composition here. Okay. Now if we take a step back and look at it, it's looking about the way that I envisioned it. I didn't really plan out the composition part before I started this little talk because I just wanted it to play out organically. One thing that I think could be interesting could be to add in some color tinting. I've got two elements that are in black and white and then this really, really colorful background. To me, that makes it appear a little bit at odds. I feel like I've got two different projects going on here. So what I want to actually do is add in some tinting to the black and white portraits, or at least one of them, to give you an idea of how to do that. I'm going to go over and hide all my layers except the layer that I want to tint. Okay? So now we're just focusing on the younger portrait of Georgia here. So I've selected that. I'm going to create a new layer. And the way that I do that is if you scroll down to the bottom of your layer tab, there's a little box with a plus in it. You can click that And that's going to create a blank layer so that there's nothing there, as you can see. It's like laying down a clear plate of glass on top of the image. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to, now that I've selected that layer, go to Edit, Fill. I'm going to take the Content tab, scroll down to Color. I'm envisioning a blue for this. So I'm going to find within the color picker, I'm going to find a nice blue. I'm going to click that. And I'm going to fill that color in. So now my tab is completely filled in blue. I can go up to my Transparency tab, select Multiply, and any of these will work. You can see as I scroll through they change somewhat, and it works pretty well, doesn't it? Okay, so I think darken is going to work the best. Actually, yeah, let's go with darken. Why not? Now I'm going to go back to my top layer, or my figure layer, I should say. I'm actually going to reselect. I'm going to select the color layer because I want to cut out everything that's blue. I want to cut out everything that's not the figure so that only the figure is tinted and not my entire composition. Okay. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to go to Edit, Cut. Now only Georgia is tinted blue. And if I add my other elements back in, okay, I can see that we have this blue tint. I chose blue because of the flower that's over her shoulder. And why don't we go ahead and do the same thing to the older portrait, except we'll choose a warmer color so that we have this balance of warm and cool colors within the same composition. Okay, and this will also give us a little bit of a chance to review how we did that because I moved pretty quickly through that. So I'm going to hide my layers except for the portrait that I want to manipulate or change. I'm selecting the layer of George O'Keeffe because when I add a new layer, which I'm going to do, you'll see that it automatically adds that layer on top of the layer that you're selected. Okay, so let me just slow down a little bit. I've got the layer selected, that's layer 3. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click that little button that's a square with a plus symbol in it, create new layer. Now I have a completely blank layer on top of the layer I was just working with. Okay, so now we're going to go to Edit. We're going to go to Fill. Once again, same step that we did last time. I'm going to click Color. When you do that, the color picker pops up, and I can scroll down to an orange in this time. Let's do an orange. Click OK. All right. Now, once again, we have this completely solid layer of orange. I can go to my transparency settings, and when I scroll through those, I can see all the different effects that it's applying to her. Most of these are not usable. I think I like overlay a lot, and I like multiply. Overlay, though, that one in particular, it bumps up the contrast, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's go back to make sure I select my layer of George O'Keeffe, go back to my selection tool. I'm going to click the image of her. I'm going to now go over to my orange layer and edit, cut. And so yet again, I just have that orange layer with her around it. Okay, so that way the entire image is not going to be tinted orange, which is what we want to avoid. Okay, seeing a little bit of a selection that we missed on, and yet again we go to the eraser tool, just go in and erase that little bit of orange. Probably not noticeable, but if we're being very particular here, we want it to look right. Okay, so let's add all of our layers back in. We should see the magic happen. Our full composition. We could add text on here if we wanted to. We'll not do that to save time, but we see we've got the couple images of Georgia O'Keeffe here. We've got our red poppies in the background, our skull, our blue flower, and we've got a nice little digital collage here that I'm actually pretty happy with. So I hope that these techniques will help you go forward with creating your own digital collage. Think about the color scheme, the way the elements are arranged in the composition, and come up with something that works for you. Okay? The last step that we want to do, as always, we want to go up to File at the top, click File, scroll down to Save As. We're going to go ahead and save it to my computer here. Okay, now right now we're in the Photoshop format, right? That is the .psd. That is great if you're saving the Photoshop file, which I recommend you do. But for turning it in or saving the final piece that's going to be uploaded to social media or printed out, you're going to want to go to JPEG for that. So we're going to click Format. We're going to scroll down to JPEG. And when I do that, let's see if we can change the title first. Let's just call it O'Keeffe Comp. And save that to JPEG. Make sure the .jpg is at the end. I'm going to save that into my digital collage folder. Click OK. This window pops up that asks us for image quality, and I always put that to the highest and then just set to progressive. And we have our JPEG saved. Okay. That's about it for this lesson. I hope it all made sense. If it doesn't, feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you for your time today.